Tetzaveh on page Lamed Zayin in our handout, which is the beginning of chapter 5. We're 3 lines into chapter 5. What we've been talking about is we've said that Moshe Rabbeinu, that Moshe and the Moshe of every generation, the leader of every generation, his job, his role is to nurture the faith of the people so that faith doesn't remain something abstract and something that is not that doesn't inform their daily life, but something that becomes personal, something that the shepherds, these shepherds of faith, feed the people their faith, meaning that the faith is something that's internalized and something that affects the way they go about their lives. Then we said that we find that the Moshe of his generation, Mordechai, one of the heroes of the story of Purim, he brought the people to a level of mesirus nefesh, of self-sacrifice. That when people, and so we went on, in the last class we talked about the fact that the people were able to reach such a high level of self-sacrifice. The fact that the Gemara remarks that the people accepted upon themselves the Torah, specifically then, that was the first time, even after Mount Sinai, after a temple, and after everything, it was specifically the time of that decree, the story of Purim, that the people finally accepted upon themselves the Torah. How is that possible? So he said, because when you reach a level of self-sacrifice in your time of persecution, that brings out that essence that allows people to access and reach the level of the essence. So we're trying to understand, though, what the connection is between being persecuted, that then brings out the best in a person. What is the connection between that and the fact that Moshe and the Moshe of every generation nurtures the faith so that the faith becomes internalized? What's the connection? And really also more clarity in what it means that Moshe nurtures the faith that becomes internalized. What does it mean that the faith, which is something that's transcendent, something that's not really a rational thing, how is it that becomes something that impacts the person on a conscious, personal level, in a meaningful way? So we started by explaining now in chapter 5 that there are, as believers, we're natural believers, the children of believers. And we explained the first reason, which we touched on last week, which is the idea of mazlayu chazi, that the soul, there's a part of the soul that remains in heaven. The higher part of the soul remains always in heaven, and that, in heaven you get good views of God. And so since the soul sees God, sees godliness, therefore it doesn't need proof, even in this world, that there is a God. It believes naturally down here because the soul sees it up there, and since the soul sees it up there, it sends down these little messages, sort of subconscious messages to the soul in this world, and the soul here then has this feeling of belief in God naturally. It's belief because it's not something that the soul down here experiences, it's messages that it gets subconsciously from above, and so it translates into faith, something that's beyond reason. But that's also why that soul, the part of the soul that's above, is called mazel, because mazel, the term mazel, means, it comes like from the term mazil, to drip, or the source of a drip. And that's because the soul sends down those messages, the soul as it's above sends those messages down here. And it's because of that we have a belief, a natural belief in God. So we're 4 lines into chapter 5. And again, you can also follow along in the Chassidic Heritage series, Nurturing Faith. I don't have that copy handy, so I'm somewhere in chapter 5. Another explanation, another reason why the soul, why we naturally believe in God, is not because the soul above sees God, but a higher reason, a deeper reason, and that is that that is that the essence of the soul is not something that sees God, but is attached to God. It's a part of God. Being attached is something, so it's not, there's no reason for it. It is its essence. Right? So you have when somebody sees something, so there's a reason why that when you see something, that resonates deep within you. It affects you in a deep way. But what's affecting you? Something outside of you is affecting you. You see something that's not you, something that's outside of you, and that impacts you, it affects you very deeply. But then there's a whole nother level, which is when it's not that you're seeing something outside of you, but it is you. It's a part of you. So that's a lot deeper within the person. What's the difference? Whether we say that the soul sees God or the soul is a part of God, what's the difference? So what's the difference between these two explanations and why we're natural believers? And then he says in the parentheses, not just explanations, but in Yonim, these are really two separate things. They're different levels, as we'll soon discover. Why is it? What's the difference? So the difference is like this, that when you see something, so that has a transcendent effect on you. Since the soul, why is it that you have a part of the soul that doesn't come into the body? It remains up in heaven. Why is that? Because it's too big to fit into the body. Right? We don't mean spatially, like in that size, but we're saying it's beyond. The body is not a vessel. It's too powerful. But the point is, the body is not a vessel to be able to contain it. So it can't be internalized. If it can't be internalized, therefore it's outside. It's in a transcendent fashion. It surrounds the person, and so therefore, whatever it experiences, the impact it has on the soul in the body is a transcendent one, not an internalized one. In order for the faith of should be something that is internalized, that is through revealing the bond that the essence of the soul has with God. Because the essence of the soul is the essence of the soul as it's in the body as well. Therefore, the faith that one has as a result through the revealing the essence of the soul is something that's internalized. In other words, essentially, faith is something that is by its very definition, by its very nature, is something that's abstract, something that's beyond. Because we, even though we have powers that are higher than our intellect, we have will, but that all relates to us, all our conscious self relates to us as we live in a conscious life with conscious awareness. So anything that already goes into the unconscious, the supra, something that goes beyond, that's already not something that will be internalized personally, because it's already not part of our immediate experience. So therefore, something that's higher, like faith, naturally can't be internalized. By its very nature, it resides in a level that's beyond our conscious behavior, our conscious selves, our conscious awareness. And so the fact that we naturally believe, the fact that we can believe at all, has to do with the fact that there's a connection with the soul as it's beyond ourselves, beyond our bodies, beyond the part of the soul that's in the body. That sees godliness. Since it's connected, it's still our soul. So therefore, it affects us in a transcendent way. And that's really the way it's supposed to work. How is it that you have an internalized faith, one that becomes part of who you are in a conscious way? That's by revealing the essence of the soul. Why? Since the essence of the soul is a part of God, and it's the essence of your soul. Meaning that it's not just the essence of the soul as it's in heaven, the part that is too big to come into this world, it's the essence of even the part that's in the body. So here already it impacts the person in a personal way. So for example, when you have intellect, so intellect is a power, is one of your highest powers. One of the highest functions of a human being is the capacity to think and to understand. This power of understanding, which is part of who you are, needs to fit into a certain vessel. There's somewhere that it needs to go for it to function. It goes into the brain, goes into the mind, and that's where you think. If your power of intellect were to express itself in the foot, you wouldn't be able to think of anything. So there'd be a power, but it wouldn't function. The same thing is with the power to see. Goes into its specific vessel, and that's where it functions. When it goes into the eye, then it sees. It goes into the arm, it won't see. Because these are specific powers that need to have a specific, they go to a specific place. But what about the essence of a person's life? Besides the fact that we have all these functions, all these powers, all these abilities, there's also the fact that we're alive. Is there any part of you that's more alive than another? Your life is your essence. So that's equal everywhere in the body. No person would ever voluntarily want to give up. Obviously, there are parts that are more vital to your life. There are vital limbs and vital organs. That's true. But no person's ever going to voluntarily give up any part of their body or any part of their life, because it's your life that is equal in all parts, both in the most functional, vital part, which is in the mind or in the heart, as well as even in the extremities. So the essence is found equally in all of these places. So the same idea is here. We're talking about the essence of the soul, not the higher level of the soul, which is a level. It's not the essence, it's a level of the soul, the level that sees godliness. That level is too high for the body, therefore it sees God where it does, and it doesn't come into the body, and its experience gets passed down and in fact affects the person in a way of makif, in a transcendent way. But then there is the essence of the soul. The essence is the essence both of the higher level and of the lower level, and so therefore its experience could be personal. In other words, when we're saying here that there's makif and pnimi, that there's, usually we talk about, this idea is discussed a lot in Chassidus, the idea of makif, transcendence, and pnimi, which is internalized. So usually when we say internalized, you're talking about something else that could then be absorbed within something. So for instance, like we talked before about the capacities of the soul, the intellect, which is a koyach pnimi, it's an internalized power that goes into the capacity to think, goes into the mind, or the capacity to see that goes into, still they're two separate things. Here we're saying something more than that. When we say pnimius here, we're not talking about something that could go in. We're talking about the essence of everything. It's a whole different type of pnimius. That the essence of the soul is the essence of every part of the soul, and therefore can affect it in that way. So now we can explain the connection in the Maimer. We were talking about, we finished chapter 4, we attempted to answer one way, the sequence in the previous Rebbe's Maimer. And we said that ultimately it doesn't seem to add up. They seem to be different things. We're talking one thing, we're talking about Moshe. Then we say that Moshe causes people to internalize their faith. Then we said that Moshe in every generation, like Mordechai, bring the people to Mesiras Nefesh. And then we said that through kasus, through persecution, through challenges, a person can reach the essence of. So we said, what's the connection between all these things? So now we can understand the sequence. That after explaining the idea of Rai Mehemda, this faithful shepherd, that it's not just that he's the faithful shepherd, but as we explained here, he shepherds the faith, meaning he nurtures the faith of the people. And what's the connection between that and being the persecution and being crushed to reach the source? Is the fact that Moshe is the one who nurtures the faith, that it should be an internalized faith, while it's not that he accesses the faith, that he takes the faith that's abstract and he brings it inside. The first explanation we gave on why we're believers, that he takes the higher level of faith, which is a level of makif that's transcendent, and he feeds it to us. So we take that and we can, and that we internalize that. That's not what we're saying. That in a way, you might be able to say that you can even, possibly, that can't necessarily be internalized. Its domain is that it's not internalized, it's makif. So when we say that he causes it to be internalized, we must conclude that it's not that he's feeding us that higher level of faith, but that he's revealing to us our essence, which is higher than Mazlayu Chazi, higher than the level of the soul seeing God. Ma'ir, the source of light, Shalamayla Ma'ir, the luminary that's higher than the light. So then why does it say crushed? What's the significance of being crushed, of persecution? In other words, we said last chapter, we said that through kasus we come to Ma'ir. Through being crushed, we reach the source, the luminary, you reach the essence. But now we're saying, how do you reach the essence? Through Moshe. Moshe is revealing the essence. So then what's the function of kasus, of being crushed? So that's what he explains in the Maimer. How do we reach that essence? It's through being crushed through the persecution in exile. Why is it? Why is it that way, that you get to that point? If it's Moshe that's nurturing that faith, Moshe is the one who's revealing the essence, so then why is it that we reach it, we achieve it through being crushed? What's that function? Because the real proof that one is accessing or living with that essence of the soul, that higher level of faith, is when that's expressed through self-sacrifice, which is primarily seen in a time of persecution, as we're going to explain. Okay, so in chapter 5, we basically said like this: Moshe nurtures the faith of the people. What does it mean that he nurtures their faith? That he feeds them the highest level of faith, that he reveals the essence of the soul. Once he reveals the essence of the soul, that's why it then comes in. Oh, so he is here. Look at that. He made it. So why is that? Because that essence is the essence of everything. So therefore, automatically it becomes internalized. That's its nature. And then, why is it though that he mentions this whole idea of kasus, of being crushed? So he explains the reason we're talking about being crushed is because that's where we see it in action. Why is that? So that's what he's going to explain now in chapter 6. Why is it that we see that why is it that the proof, as it were, or the expression of that essence of the soul, when you access that, why is that expressed through self-sacrifice? Chapter 6. So the fact that the faith is of a person, of a Jew, causes him to sacrifice himself. It's primarily, not exclusively, there be other factors at play, but primarily that is a function of the essence of the soul. Why? True that there's the impact that one has, that the higher level of the soul, seeing godliness, that impact it has on the person is very profound, very deep. In fact, it's possible that a person, because of the fact that his soul in heaven sees godliness, it's possible that it also lead him to self-sacrifice, because he knows that that's the true reality. So even though he's maybe not living it, it's maybe a little beyond his capacity to appreciate it and to internalize it. It's something that's abstract, as we discussed earlier. It's a makif kind of faith, but that could be something that can be very impactful, and one might even give his life for it. In fact, the idea that when we say that he sees godliness, that the godly soul above, the higher level of the soul, sees godliness, that impact is very profound. He brings in note 33, Shalachin Eined Nasadayin. We know there's a halacha that a witness cannot be a judge. What does that mean? What is he adding? We all know, everybody knows, we discussed actually the Sikha we learned before Shavuos, we talked about the difference between seeing and hearing, right? The impact of seeing. What's the point? Why can an aid be a dayan? Why can a witness adjudicate a case? Why can he judge a case? Because the whole point is that the judges in Jewish law, the expectation is that a judge needs to be able to see both sides of an argument and needs to be able to find some kind of a reason to acquit. You need to be able to come up with something. You need to be able to at least try and reach such a conclusion. But if you've seen something happen, you know the guy's guilty. If you know he's guilty because you saw him commit the crime, then it's impossible for you to find some kind of a reason to acquit him. You can't see the other side. Obviously, we're talking about somebody who's actually guilty. We're not talking about when you saw something and we saw something where it's 100%. It's an open and shut case, which means what? You can see something. So there's the impact that seeing has on you. The impact of seeing is so profound that it impacts even your thought process. So even though I can sit in court and I can listen to arguments from both lawyers, and those arguments it could be very compelling, intelligent arguments, and theories and ideas. And my mind should be able to at least be able to come around to see those perspectives. But because I saw it, I'm incapable of doing that. So you see that seeing can overwhelm even the way your mind works, the way you see things, the way you understand things. So we see that seeing something can be very impactful. It can be so impactful that you can't see any other way. And that's why I said it's possible that one could come to self-sacrifice because of the fact that he sees godliness. But it's possible, it's not certain. Because as much as something could be real, at the end of the day, it's still two separate things. There's me and there's the thing that I saw. So the thing I saw impacted me. I know of its existence, I know of its impact, I know of its importance, that's great. But it's still not me. Since it's the reason you have this faith, there's a reason for this faith. Because you see, it's not who you are. It doesn't, it's that's the point here, that it's not certain that you're going to give your life for it. You could, but it's not for sure. That's not 100% compelling enough for you to give your life for it. Because ultimately it's something else. It's something outside of you. So, maybe you survived before you knew about it. Now that you saw it, you can survive again just fine without it. But the fact that a person has a faith that causes him to have no choice but to sacrifice himself, to give his life, that's because the godliness is his essence. So it's impossible for him to deny it. Like we talked about in the last class, the idea of denying. What does it mean? Somebody says he's going to threaten your life, that if you don't deny, if you don't renounce God, he's going to take your life. What is he asking? He doesn't know. He can't read your mind. He doesn't know what you're thinking. He's just asking you basically to make some kind of a hollow, a superficial declaration, a proclamation. That's it. So, would you be? Why can't a person do that? Why can a person do that? It's a hollow external act. It's not something that he believes. He believes in God 100%. The guy wants to take his life, so he says, he plays some lip service. So, as real as God is, you might entertain the thought. And even if you end up sacrificing yourself, even entertaining the thought is already something that shows that it's not the essence. But the fact that it doesn't even cross your mind to renounce God, even in that superficial way, is because you can't disconnect in any way on any level. Because God is your very essence. You can't remove yourself from your own essence. It's not possible. And so therefore, this happens without any thought process whatsoever, without any thinking, without any decision. It's just instinctive because that's the essence of who you are. It's kind of like the story of the Alter Rebbe. When the Alter Rebbe was in prison, so he could have gotten off, and when one of the questions asked him is if he's a student of the Baal Shem Tov. And the Alter Rebbe said yes. And had he said no, it would have gotten off a lot easier, because part of the issue with all the accusations against him is, because he follows this new cult of Chassidism, and so if he said he wasn't a student of the Baal Shem Tov, so that's it, he's not a student of the Baal Shem Tov. And the truth is, he wouldn't have been lying, because he wasn't a student of the Baal Shem Tov. He was a student of the Baal Shem Tov's successor. He was a student of the Maggid. So it would actually be the truth. And yet, he said he couldn't do it. He couldn't disconnect himself from the Baal Shem Tov for even one moment. Just like a person, there's never a time that a person could say he's just going to cut off his arm. For no reason. If you're going to preserve the essence of your life, and that is already disconnected away from the arm, person, God forbid, needs such an operation, that's one thing. The same motivation that prevents a person from cutting off his arm will motivate him to cut off his arm in that scenario. But to just do something like that is not possible. So when a person has self-sacrifice, this type of self-sacrifice, what is it? That's a function of the essence of the soul. That's why he does that. Okay. Valpiz, the second paragraph of chapter 6. Valpiz, yesh levar mashkas ba maimer. Dezesh moish uray mehemna. Shuzon mo fanes simon hu gam negel rei so shbechol dor. Especially the moish bechol dor. Remember, we talked about earlier in the maimer the fact that the previous Rebbe in his 1927 maimer starts off by telling us about Moses, the first Jewish leader, who nurtured the faith, that the faith should be internalized. Then he went on to say that this is true also of the Moses of every generation, and he singles out Mordechai. He talks about Purim, and he talks about Mordechai doing it, and talking about Mordechai bringing the people to Mesiras Nefesh. So we explained it. We touched on it a little bit. Now, based on what we said, we understand this a lot better, the connection of the two, the flow of these ideas. That he starts off by talking about Moshe being the one who causes the people nurtures their faith, meaning he reveals the higher faith, the faith that is the essence. That's the fact that the essence of the soul is connected to God. And then he moves on to say that that Mordechai did the same thing. Mordechai brought the people to Mesiras Nefesh. They seem to be two different things. One is nurturing faith that should be internalized. One is bringing them to self-sacrifice. What's the connection? Because now we understand it. Because the self-sacrifice is an expression of the essence of the soul. So when you see when you see Mordechai's generation coming to self-sacrifice, that level of self-sacrifice, that's a function of him revealing the essence of the soul. It's the essence of the soul in action, which was uncovered, which the people accessed as a result of Mordechai. The fact that Moshe Rabbeinu nurtures the faith of the people, that we said, the language that's brought in Chassidus, but Alter Rebbe brings it in his Maimer, the Friedrich Rebbe even brings it in his Maimer that we're talking about here, is that Moshe is Mashpia Das. Das, we know, is the third level of intellect. and das is the anchor that causes the intellect, the idea that you think of, that you understand, these concepts to be anchored, to impact you in a personal way. So you can have an idea, and just because something that you thought of, something that you understood, and you understand very well, but just because you understand it, that remains abstract, remains in the world of ideas, of theory. How does it impact you? That's the function of das, where you're changed by it, where these ideas, these concepts, things that you understand, or conclusions that you come to, perspectives that you have, impact you. They change you, they mature you. That's a function of das. So when we say that Moshe stimulates the das of the people, what does that mean? He's taking this faith that seems disconnected and anchoring it. He's bringing it in das, that it's something that impacts them. It transforms them, changes them. So that's one thing. So that seems to be one thing. But what he explains here in this discourse, that they strengthen the faith of the people in a way that that they should reach Mesiras Nefesh, that seems to be a different topic altogether. But based on what we said, we can understand. As we explained, what's the meaning of the Raya Mehemna, the one who nurtures faith, is that he nurtures the faith itself. That the faith shouldn't just be on the level of Giluyim, meaning something that you see that's outside of yourself. But witness that the soul sees godliness. It should be from the essence of the soul. Okay, let's do this outside first, and then we'll read it inside quickly. What is he saying here? We talked about a level of the soul that sees godliness and therefore impacts the soul in a way that's abstract, in a way that doesn't change the person. You can have faith in God and still go ahead and live your life totally disregarding that faith, that awareness. That's because you have there's your soul, there's you, then there's God, and you happen to see God. So you're certain of God's existence and His importance and His impact in life, but it's still something that's outside of you. You could still go about living your life outside of that. It's not you. Then there's the higher level, which is that the soul is a part of God. That's the essence of the soul. Here already, it's not something else, it's you. So God is not an abstract idea, it's your very essence. So that affects you in a much deeper way, because it's the essence of who you are, even as you are down here, disconnected in a way from the soul as it is above, because it's the essence of the soul even within you. It's your essence. So Moshe Rabbeinu nurtures that faith. He reveals the essence of the soul within the people. How did Moshe do it? Or what was in Moshe's time? What happened by Moshe nurturing that faith? By Moshe accessing, channeling the essence of the soul. What happened? The people were able to internalize it, because, as we said, the essence of the soul is the essence of the soul, even the body. So if you're living your life with das, meaning where that faith informs you on a conscious level, it's a sign that what faith are you accessing? What faith is functioning within you? This faith that comes from the essence of the soul, because the faith has been internalized. It's been personalized. And what faith could be internalized and personalized? Only the faith of the essence. The faith that's from seeing godliness doesn't impact you in the same way. That faith leads you to pray before you steal. But the higher faith, the essence faith, that faith doesn't allow you to steal.
Is it only bringing Mesiras Nefesh, or it's also affecting you in higher life?
So we'll get to how it affects you. So that's a function of Moshe Rabbeinu. That Moshe is the one who reveals that level within. So when it says that Moshe was mashpia das, Moshe stimulated das, is the people, the generation of the desert. Moshe's generation were called the Dor Deya, das, meaning that faith informed them. It was internalized. What faith could be internalized? So we see if you're living a life with internalized faith, so what faith that has been internalized? The higher faith. But then the Rebbe says, then there's something else, which is living your life in that way is only a result of having access to that higher level of faith, to the essence. But then there's the faith in action. Then there's the faith actually doing something, functioning. What's a function of the faith? A function of the faith is self-sacrifice. When a person gives his life, that's a function of the essence of the soul. So you could live your life and not steal and serve God your whole life, and it's not the essence functioning. It's just proof that the essence is Your behavior is not the essence, in action. It's behavior that comes as a result of the essence being triggered. It's a result of it. But here we're saying when a person has that self-sacrifice, that we'll get to eventually how you can live your life with that in that way as well, beyond Mesiras Nefesh. But that's still a ways away. But the point is that, so we see the difference that when a person has self-sacrifice, that's the higher level of faith in action. Okay, so let's see. Moshe Rabbeinu nurtures the faith that should be internalized. So that's a Tetzaveh, that's a result of him nurturing and accessing within the people the higher level of faith. How is it that one could have his faith affect his das, meaning impact him in a meaningful way? That's through revealing the essence of the soul. But based on this, we can say the but we could say that in the generations, the subsequent generations after Moshe, when the people needed Mesiras Nefesh, they needed to have self-sacrifice. They were being challenged in their faith, and they needed to put their lives on the line. So where that happened, and the leaders, the Moseses of those generations, strengthened the faith of the people, so that they should withstand those pressures and have that self-sacrifice. So this brought out the idea of being a faithful shepherd, which is Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe is the one called Rai Mehemna. But by the Moshes of the later generations, we saw Moshe's role, his impact, in greater measure than even by Moshe in his own lifetime. The main expression of that higher level of faith, of the essence of the soul in action, comes through Mesiras Nefesh. Moshe Rabbeinu's people, it's not a fault of Moshe that he didn't bring the people to Mesiras Nefesh. They didn't need Mesiras Nefesh. So he did what he had to do to nurture the faith, and the people lived their lives. And we know that he did his job that way. But in the later generations, where there were challenges and obstacles, and the people were threatened, and they needed to have that self-sacrifice, that revealed this essence level on a much deeper level than by Moshe himself. We'll continue, I guess, next class we'll move on to chapter 7.